I thank the ranking member. It's a shame that the committee majority shows so little interest in legislation that might promote technological innovation and improve management of federal information technology. Instead, we are conducting another partisan hearing that isn't really related to our committee's primary jurisdiction. Now the committee is holding a hearing to attack common sense EPA limits on mercury, arsenic, dioxin, and other pollution. Consider the pressing technology-related topics in which this committee has not held a hearing: cloud computing, data center consolidation, an update to FISMA, implementation of the Chief Information Office's 25-point plan, or improvements to the acquisition workforce. We have not held hearings on filling the gaping holes in our acquisition workforce or about how to improve training for acquisition personnel. We have held markups of the legislation to create new unfunded mandates and private sector regulations, the DATA Act, but not on legislation to streamline or expedite data center consolidation or the shift to cloud-based data storage and processing. Under Republican leadership, this committee has abandoned the most important issues in federal technology and management issues, which are of vital importance to one of the most important job-creating sectors of our economy, technology. Instead of focusing on these important topics, the committee majority has decided to attack limits on mercury and other toxic pollution. The EPA is updating standards to regulate toxic mercury pollution because the courts found that a prior rule issued under the Bush administration on behalf of the polluters violated law. Under the Obama administration, the EPA actually is trying to do its job and reduce toxic pollution as Congress directed in 1990. As the EPA attempts to administer the Clean Air Act, it is worth recalling that the Clean Air Act used to have bipartisan support. It was signed into law by a Republican president 40 years ago and strengthened substantially by a Republican president in 1990. By any empirical measure, the Clean Air Act is a wild success. It saves 160,000 lives annually by preventing deaths that would otherwise be caused by air pollution. Major regulations implemented in the Clean Air Act have saved far more money than they have cost to be implemented. Since the Clean Air Act was passed, the U.S. economy has grown by 200%, and we have fostered a vibrant new clean energy industry that creates jobs without creating diseases associated with fossil fuel production. The regulation this committee majority is attacking today is typical of the Clean Air Act regulations that will save lives and money. According to CRS, the utility Mact rule would save 6,800 to 17,000 lives per year, with a net savings of at least $48 billion. The Republican claim to be concerned that this life-saving public health standard will threaten the reliability of electricity supply. Once again, we are presented with a false choice. In this case, a false choice between electricity and clean air. Those of us who have been outside today breathe cleaner air right here in the nation's capital as a direct result of the Clean Air Act. And yes, there are far more cars on the road and kilowatts of electricity being produced than when Congress passed the Clean Air Act in 1970. The primary Republican witness today, Virginia Attorney General Ken Cuccinelli, he has used his office to focus on narrow ideological issues that, in my view, squander taxpayer investment. He subpoenaed, for example, former UVA professor Michael Mann in 2010 because he believed that Mann's well-regarded climate research might qualify as fraud under Virginia law. Not surprisingly, a circuit court disagreed. Now Attorney General Cuccinelli is appealing to the Virginia Supreme Court. The witch hunt has drawn condemnation from 800 Virginia scientists, the conservative Richmond Times-Dispatch, and almost every other major newspaper in the Commonwealth, the American Association of the Advancement of Science, and so many others. It is appalling that taxpayer money would be squandered in a vain attempt to discredit a single climate scientist. In addition to litigating against his own state's premier university, founded by Thomas Jefferson, he filed a lawsuit against the federal government for the EPA's finding that greenhouse gas pollution poses a danger to human health and welfare. Unfortunately, as a caricature for the modern Republican Party, Attorney General Cuccinelli has fulfilled the predictions of the Washington Post editorial board, suggesting that given his bizarre ideas, he would very likely become an embarrassment to the Commonwealth. I regret that we are holding this hearing instead of going into other topics that I think would be more productive and would, in fact, create jobs. With that, I yield back.